go with. Thank you. And Emma's already hit the record. Look at that. I put a little record slide to remind us both, Emma.
Thanks, Ken.
On a Friday, sometimes we need to be reminded.
Would you like to cover off those questions, those follow-up questions to start with?
Yeah, let's do that. Now, so there were a couple of questions I think that we missed, didn't get time to in the last session. So what were they, those, Emma?
So this is at the beginning of the session from Tim, just around the road safety audit and what we call it. And would it be better in the beginning to call it a road safety assessment?
Yeah, great call, Tim. Had you been in the UK back 27 years ago in that office, we probably would have saved a lot of headache. Well, maybe not. Maybe not. I mean, there are certain advantages with calling it an audit because it people feel it is such an important process within an infrastructure project. It sounds very, official, and so people are like, "Oh, we've got to get an audit done." And it's really, in my mind, that word has given it some kudos, and it's probably helped it become so prolific around the world and in infrastructure projects. But in the actual practical sense, once you're doing it, and then the confusion around what power it has, the fact that people think it's just checking against standards, and then you're bringing up other things, and they're very confused about it. The idea that an auditor does not have any sort of power to, mandate things or force things upon a project. It would certainly ease some confusion there. But I think that's an important thing out of this course that we want auditors themselves to be very clear on what the purpose is and how it's done. They can feed that back and have those discussions with their clients that they're auditing for as we go. And those of you who just procure audits or get them done or the like, you'll be very clear on what to expect, and you can share that with your colleagues, that information and knowledge. Good question. Thanks, Tim.
Yep, and there was just one more around when we were looking at.
Oh, Emma, your audio's gone a little bit bad again. Maybe the microphone.
Is this just maybe is that a bit better if I hold it like that? Okay. Are trap lanes more acceptable in urban city areas with lower speed and limited space to widen roads with additional lanes?
Oh, okay. So trap lanes, I'm glad people remember the trap lane. It's a wonderful example of sort of road safety auditing in that blurred area between standards and guidelines, and then genuine road safety, and road safety issues. And it's a very vivid one. So are they more acceptable? Well, certainly the point in that question about the speed being lower, I think is a really good one. And that would just mean the risk is lower, the risk of death and serious injury, because the speeds are lower. But the fact that you've got constraints in land, as a road safety auditor, that's probably, you might factor that into how you try to help them with recommendations. But it's an issue. It's an issue. You just got to point it out. You can't be sort of sympathetic to the constraints, because you're just there to, say, could this cause death or serious injury? So yeah, if it's a very constrained area, it's got a trap lane, and you have that same sort of trap lane configuration in another area where there's lots of space, the issue is still the same, the risk is still the same, the recommendations are probably going, they're probably going to be the same. You might not word them in a different way, because you can probably see one of them, they've got heaps of land, heaps of space, and they could easily widen and it's all good. The other one's got, high-rise buildings and all sorts of other constraints. You might, certainly say that you'd like to widen, but you really might be focusing a lot more attention on ways that you could reduce that risk without widening, if you're sort of kind of aware it's an impossibility. Thank you. Good question. All right. I thought that there was a case study, an example that I didn't get to in the last session. So I thought I'd just run with it now. But I'm seeing no matter the risk sorry, this is a question that's coming in, which I'll just take before I start. No matter the risk, we should always identify the risk. If ignored, is there potential it could return in the future? Yeah, so certainly there's a limit, I suppose, to what you report on. You don't report on everything you thought about, and you've got to sort of set your threshold of risk at some point. Otherwise, you're reporting on every little, tiny crack that could be a trip hazard, and a little bit of, things that that are very, very low risk. So you sort of draw your line somewhere, and then you're obligated to report on all the risks, regardless of whether or not you can think of a way to reduce that risk. Okay, and it would be an acceptable thing to write an audit finding and have no recommendations, and the recommendation could be look for ways to reduce this risk. Like, now, most of the time, in fact, all the time, I'm sure you'll be able to think of ways that you can do that. But yeah, we've got to report those risks we see, regardless of how much trouble it's going to cause in the project, how much, how much you look at it and you go, oh my God, I can see, like from a project manager perspective or a designer perspective, I can see exactly why they've had to do this. They've got a massive, gas main there, and they've got, these challenges here. So you can be super sympathetic to them. And you could even write a little bit of that into your finding, but you've got to say it. So in your finding, you could say, the auditors acknowledge the challenges with services. However, the configuration of the lanes in this, blah, 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 whatever. All right, let's just do this little case study. I'll give out a prize. Might as well. We're on a prize roll for a Friday. Okay, here we go. It's a local government road here, intersecting with an arterial road. And the arterial road here is high speed. It's 100 km/h speed zone down here. This one's also 100 km/h. So this is a rural intersection, lower volume on this one, a bit higher volume on this one. And then it goes into this sort of unsealed road, which continues on for quite a way down here, and eventually connects through to another arterial road. So the project is fairly simple. All they're doing is formalizing and sealing that road. Curb and channel, formalizing the intersection a bit, and sealing the road through. And on this project, they said, well, the questions were asked, well, should we do a road safety audit? And this is internally, and they said, well, we're just making the situation better. We're formalizing it, curb and channel, adding new surface on here. It's all great for road safety. We don't need to do a road safety audit. And so they didn't. And they built that. And within 3 years, I think, after it, they were out there because it had presented as a significant black spot since they'd done the work. So that was quite a number of serious injuries, and a fatality had occurred at this location in a 3-year period. So it became really bad really quickly after they did the work. But it was, safety upgrade work and improvement work. So, so why, pop into the chat, why you think that all of a sudden it went up like that? Any ideas? Okay, I'm going to give a prize to. Let's see. Yeah, I'm going to prize to both Rob and Will. So Rob and Will, because they're both along the same line. and then a few others are a bit later, sort of getting onto the same theory. So if we go back here and we look at this scenario, if you were approaching from down here, you see a sort of very significant change in what you're looking at in terms of the surface and those sort of things. But as soon as that sort of happens, your road really looks like it just continues on through. And you've created, again, more of this visual deceit that we talked about earlier. And I do use this one as an example because it's quite like that idea as an example quite often, because it's a good one. So that has caused one issue. And then, of course, we get the same now in the other direction, where the road continues on and gives a bit of that. So from ground level, don't worry about the burnout marks. They're just people doing burnouts. But it's the see-through effect we're looking at here. So that's the new bit of road. But I think that's the one that had the majority of the crashes occurring, with the road continuing along, and perhaps even drivers that were a bit more familiar with it, but were very used to that visual clue of the big change in surface and everything coming up. And somebody else pointed out the power poles continue through, which I think is a really good one. In fact, Emma, you can find back who said the power pole one, because we did talk about that as another factor that encourages a see-through effect as well as a prize. So, yeah. Now, actually, well, given our prizes, why not? What could the auditor have? Had they done an audit at this location, right, during the design before they built? What could the auditor possibly suggest that could have reduced the risk of overshoot crashes at this intersection? Okay, so I'm going to give this one to Tim straight off the bat. He was the quickest in with one idea, which I really like, which is a median island. A median island in the middle here. So a median island, there you go. That's detailed design there. I could stamp that, issued for construction. A median island is an amazing little feature to give a driver approaching an intersection a clue that they don't have priority through it and that there's an intersection there. It's quite effective. In fact, in rural areas, we would give a crash reduction factor of about 45%. So you get 45% reduction in people crashing at this intersection by the installation of a splitter island like that. In urban areas, it's less than that. But so that, I think, is a really quite effective one. And if they're doing all this, it's sort of something that could have been built into that. Now, there's lots of bigger picture ones that others have put in and are really good, and they're certainly prize-worthy, but Tim was in quickest with his first idea. So we had roundabout, and absolutely a roundabout would be a wonderful, wonderful treatment. And funnily enough, cut to 10 years later, and there is now a roundabout at this intersection. So it was what they wanted to get to. Offset the intersection, another valuable tool. So offset the intersection, it's what we call or a staggered T. So you just slightly move your road. In fact, I'll do it on a different one here. I'll do it on one of the aerials. You slightly move your road out, and then hazard board there or whatever, and there's no see-through effect. You're not looking straight down another road. You're looking at a hazard board and the end of the road. So other ideas, colouring the surface. So certainly might highlight a bit that the intersection is there. Warning signs on the approach to the intersection, absolutely something that could be done. Islands, texture changes, rumble strips on the approach, so some warning from that perspective. Increasing the visibility of the line marking and the like. So there you go. You have quite an interesting little example there. And lighting, yeah, lighting's a good one, certainly if you have nighttime concerns. So I'm not going to go on about this one much more, but I think it really, to me, is a great example for anybody who thinks, I'm doing a project that's improving the road environment. Why would I need a road safety audit? Like, this is great. I'm going to follow all the standards, follow the guidelines. We've got great engineers doing this. The auditor comes in and just looks at it from that holistic, different perspective. Safety is the focus, putting themselves in the shoes of the different road users. There you go, a little bit of encouragement of road safety auditing. So a little bit of commentary in there. Russell can get a prize. Eagle-eyed Russell, I'm going to have to call him now. So Eagle-eyed Russell has picked up, and I personally, I don't think this is a big road safety issue, but it is something worth noting that they've got a stop. There's a stop sign there, but there's give way line marking. So it's like, those are things that you pick up as a road safety auditor, but that's not making a major difference in people overshooting and crashing here and having death and serious injury. But it might contribute a little bit here, and it's just not right. So we'd be reporting and fixing them. Good spotting though. Excellent work. So no prize. Emma, you're going to run out of prizes, I think, with this group. No, you should see our office. It's just mountains of prizes.
We will be fine.
Yeah, we will be.
Prizes forever. Well, prizes are plenty.
It's like an Oprah road safety audit course. What are the prizes? Tim, what a great question. It's a Friday, I'm off script, but I just got given our newest set of prizes, Safe System Solutions socks. Nice sort of Explorer winter socks. Good stuff. They've got to be liked. They've got to be able to be sent. And then lots of other things. Right, incentivizing people to answer questions, ask good questions. Do they have padding on the socks? No, they're nice thick socks. Right, I've got a lot of content to get through, but I'm loving the interaction. I'm loving this group. Let's keep going. Okay, so last session we really explored what is this thing called a road safety audit, and what are the types of audits that we can do, right? So we talked about you could do it early, the feasibility, that planning audit, or we could do the design audits, and we could do the concept design, functional design, or we could do that detailed design with the meaty stuff in there. We could do a road safety audit of the roadwork scheme, the construction site. We could do a post-opening just before they cut the ribbon. If it's a new road, often we do brownfield sites, we call them, that are getting road upgrades. So they're kind of live to traffic as you're going. So it's a bit hard to audit before they cut the ribbon. But the post-opening, so very quickly after it's open to traffic. The existing conditions road safety audit. And now that one has that funny that the term that Tim put forward there, wouldn't it be better to call them road safety assessments? An existing conditions road safety audit is called an amazing amount of things around the world. It is called a safety assessment, safety inspection. Road safety diagnostic is a term that's used in quite a number of countries. Road safety check, I think one country uses. So, lots of different terms for that one. Australia uses the term, an existing conditions road safety audit. But he's asking if there's a prize, a shaver as a prize for my moustache. Take a prize off whoever said I said that. No, joke. Okay, so there were the sort of types of audits you can do. And in every one of those audits, right, regardless whether it's a feasibility a post-opening, existing conditions, you follow the same 8 steps. Okay, the process is the same. It's just the information you're getting and the type, the amount of detail you're given and those sorts of things is different. So this session, I want to define those 8 steps of a road safety audit. And one of the things I suppose which has been quite good is internationally, there's general consistency with these 8 steps. And I'll put you with some further information. So, road safety audit is a fairly straightforward process, 8 steps. It does take time. It adds value to the project. And it really should be an integral part of that design process for any project of any substance that's going to interact with the road network. Now, just a little question here. Here's a directional sign. Greens are directional sign colour. Certainly in Australia and New Zealand, green is directional sign. There you go, telling you where Ballarat is and Yendon and the like. Anybody see anything slightly odd about that sign? And I'll let you think about that for a bit and I'll come back to it. But if you can see something a little odd and be the first one to put that in the chat, I'll give you a prize. But here are the 8 steps in a road safety audit, okay? They are documented in the Austroads Guide to Road Safety Part 6A. Taken a sheet out of actually one of the old ones, but it's the same process. And I'm going to go through each of these steps very briefly with you because it's just a process I want you to sort of remember. But the audit team is selected, okay? And the responsibility for that rests with the client, the designer. And they have absolute ability to request a specific auditor if they want, or they may, common practice is that they, ask an appropriately qualified and insured and the like consultancy to do the audit, and the consultancy puts together the appropriate team. But the client could be specific if they want. The information is provided, the designs, any background information. There is a commencement meeting. However, this is sort of talked about as something that it can be a phone call, could be just an email and brief, and especially if it's a auditor that knows the process and it's a project which is fairly well contained within the design and those sorts of things. So, but there's some sort of exchange of discussion and information there. The documents are assessed then during the, and you assess the documents, you look at all of that, you review the designs, you inspect the site during the daytime and the nighttime. Now, this daytime and nighttime, it's quite strongly encouraged in the Austroads Guide that you should always do a daytime and nighttime. But it is not absolutely mandated, but it's really put back to the client, the procurer of the auditor, the designer, to say that to the auditor if they opted to say, well, you only needed to do it during the daytime. You write the audit report up, and there's some formats that we like that to happen in. Some sort of completion meeting or handing over of the information of the project and clarifying any questions. And again, that can be a phone call and things if it's a smaller, simpler project. But sometimes it is sit down, go through the findings, talk about them, explain them. The client, the receiver of the road safety audit report, then responds to the ideas and the recommendations. They can respond and say, I agree with this issue, or they can say, I disagree with this being an issue. They can say, I agree with the recommendation, we're going to do that. Or they can say, we don't agree with the recommendation, we're going to do something else. Or they can say, we don't agree with the finding in the first place, and so no recommendation, nothing will be action. And that is all absolutely fine, as long as they clearly document it and they cover themselves that they've done that from an evidence-based sort of position. those responses don't necessarily need to go back to the audit team. That'd be nice. It's always nice for the auditors to get that and close everything, have that package together. But it's really, as soon as you hand over your road safety audit report, your job is done. You don't need to follow up and say, hey, have you rectified that? Or it's the process then for the project manager, the designer, whoever's receiving that, and their responsibility to action it. And we want to see things implemented. If there is never any intention to make any change and implement any change as a result of a road safety audit, what's the point in doing it? Just throwing money down the drain then. Okay, we've got to start implementing changes and rectifying things if they're presented in the audit and they're reasonable. So in most jurisdictions, you're required to have a team of auditors, and the team has to be led by a senior road safety auditor or somebody with that experience. Now, most jurisdictions in Australia have a register of road safety auditors, and I'll talk you through how to get on those registers in the last module. But you then have a sort of graduation. So you enter in as a road safety auditor or a level 1 in some jurisdictions, but you just enter in as a road safety auditor. And that's an acknowledgement that we can't expect people to start their auditing career being amazing auditors. No, they get mentoring, they get more experience with senior auditors and lead auditors, and then they graduate up to that position of a senior auditor after sort of proving their experience. So a couple of tips here, a few tips here. You really want to use a team. And the current Austroads guide just highly encourages teams. But again, there's a little bit of a get out to say, on a low risk, small project, a one-person audit team could be acceptable. The next Austroads guide, if it gets through the board, will be stronger on this and basically say it's got to be a team. Make sure everybody is independent. I think we covered that pretty well last time. And really only a senior auditor should be leading that team. It would be wonderful if you have a nice broad range of people in this team. You have different road safety experience, professions, ages, empathy with different road users, males, females. That would be ideal. I mean, here's an interesting little audit team that I put together this quite a while back now, but we had the three of us who were all ex-Vic Roads, about the same age, all engineers, but basically all look at the road the same. And so in the team, we decided to pull in Wendy, who was older than us, female, not an engineer, came at it with a very different set of eyes. And it was nice to have that rounded perspective and somebody asking us different questions, pointing out different things. The reality of sort of all of this is, and the practical reality of it is, that to put a team like this together is more challenging in terms of time, resource requirements, and those sorts of things. So you often don't have that luxury, and you're in a consultancy maybe, or you're in a different team and you just put together what you can and you get it done. Okay, but that's a nice ideal if you can. The other thing that I haven't quite mentioned yet is, but it was alluded to in a slide previously, was that you can have others involved in the audit. Okay, they still have to be independent. You can't have the project team in there or the designer. Wendy is actually a road safety auditor, but we could have the principal of the local school could be part of the audit team. The local police officer could be a part of the audit team. Now, yes, certainly they're probably not going to be adding technical input, but they're certainly going to give insights into how these areas being used, local knowledge, different bits and pieces, and that can be really rich information for an audit team. One of my other little tricks is, as an audit team, is we get out there in our high-vis vests with clipboards, and this works better. This obviously is better in urban areas, although it does work in rural areas as well. And you just stand there for a while looking at the site and wait for the people to come up and tell you all the problems with the intersection. Because they know, they've been, their houses they've been living on the corner for 40 years. They tell you everything that's ever happened to this intersection. Now, obviously, you want to consider all of that, but it's a wonderful wealth of information. Be very cautious about how you do that for your clients, though. You obviously don't want to cause any community consultation challenges, but people are a wealth of knowledge, and as I'm sure many of you know, high-vis vest, clipboard, we're like lights, and they're like moths. They come flying out of everywhere. Okay, doing well. So you assess the documents and you inspect the site. We like to inspect the site at night because it brings up a few other things we may not have seen. So things like sign retroreflectivity. So there's the North Croydon directional sign during the day, and there it is at night. Oh, where is it? Well, there's a state road number sign there, but nothing else. So you pick up those sorts of things. The lights can also, you can see different things based on the street lighting or non-existence of street lighting. Occasionally the land use changes significantly at night, nightclubs or the like. What are some other things? Oh, headlight impacts, glare, and the like. So sometimes road alignments, you're seeing different road alignments changing, and you say, oh, okay, the headlights are there, but as they alter that, it's going to really be straight at people at a height, and they're just going to be blinded for this whole section. So as an auditor, you might be recommending different screens or alterations from that perspective. Now, who came up with some answers to this, and who was quickest?
Got lots of good answers there, Ken.
It looks like Julian was quickest on that one.
Yeah.
Closely followed by Tim. Oh, geez, Julian must have some fast internet going on there. The break in the sign is in the wrong spot. So I suppose the question is, I won't get you to type it in, but do you know there's a break in a roundabout sign? You've probably driven past tens of thousands of them in your time. Have you ever noticed that? The break should be over this side. And why is that? Well, the reason is another subtle reminder to people of which way to go around a roundabout. And obviously driving on the left, and we go around the roundabout in that clockwise direction. But it's funny, like that you can ask people about that, is there a gap in the circle or roundabout sign? And they'll just go, I have no idea. Sometimes I do it with, people who are working in the roads game, and can't quite work it out. But it's very, very subtle thing. But what would be the issue, I suppose? What's the issue with that? I mean, people are going to get around the roundabout, aren't they? And in fact, probably as a road safety auditor, I'd have to mark that fairly low risk in this scenario. I mean, luckily, these things are going to get changed because they're just wrong. But what's the actual road safety risk of that? Well, I suppose a question I'd have is, what scenarios do you think that risk might just go up a little bit and be elevated? Anybody want to type in there? Oh, Will's already in there before I even asked it. Will's gone. People from other countries, and Tim's come back with tourist roads. Absolutely, right? Okay. So let's have a look at this next one. Here we go. This is the first roundabout you get to coming out of Hobart International Airport from the rental car place. So you drive down that road a bit. This is the first one you hit. And maybe, oh, you go, service station, cool. And maybe you've come from a country, maybe America. You're an American tourist. You've landed, you've been flying for 23 hours with your kids. They've been screaming. Finally get into this rental car. You go, just got to get to that hotel in Hobart. Okay, 20-minute drive. We can do this. Let's go. The kids are screaming. Okay, we're just going to stop into this service station and get some supplies. You've never driven through a roundabout in your life. You come up to that. You like driving on the right. Is that enough to make it a little bit more risk? I think so. So I, as an auditor, I sort of conjure these types of scenarios in my mind a little bit. So I just elevate the risk of that. And that's based on the context. So we do think about context when we audit. It's not to say that an American tourist will never hit this one, approach this one. But it's less likely. In order to get to it, they probably traveled through lots of roundabouts, and it's a slightly different scenario. So those tourist areas, we need to start thinking about things a little bit differently. People do drive on the wrong side of the road, and then Tim's down there in an area with lots of tourists, so he's probably very aware of these, ways that you've got to think about how your infrastructure and your signage goes to ensure that tourists can do the best job they possibly can. Let's just check. Okay. So then you write your audit report, and the report has some specific things that we want to put in there. And I'm going to just show you, it's the easiest, I think, to just show you a table of contents that sort of meets the current Austroads requirements. There's stuff in there, but there's a few really, I suppose, important points. Actually, it's better on the last slide. This one is so important. The list of information provided to the audit team, right? I'll tell you this one from personal experience as a road safety auditor. We audited an intersection upgrade proposal as a team. This is quite a while back, and we wrote up our audit report, and we wrote down exactly the design number that we were given, the version, the date of that, and we proceeded to do our audit. We made recommendations. We handed that over to the design team, and off they went, and we didn't hear back from them. And the next thing we heard was that the road authority was pulling the audit team into the coroner's court because of a fatality that had happened at the intersection, which we audited. Okay, you get very concerned, obviously, and for many reasons, that somebody's been killed at an intersection that you've worked on and the like. And so we quickly look, obviously get out there and what's been, what's happened here. And we looked at what had been built, very different to what we audited. And so we get into the coroner's court, and really the questioning is sort of, why as an auditor did you not pick these things up? And we said, well, because this is what we audited, and it's very clearly stated in the plans that that's the plan we audited. Here it is. They did a whole lot of different stuff after we audited it, so we know what are we to do. Coroner said, thank you for your time, so that then became a different debate down the track. So there's just a little one for you to remember of the importance of being very specific with that, and always just keep a copy of the plans that you audited. You list your team members, the dates it was carried out, and your safety requirements. You do sign a road safety audit. It's an official document. You sign it. It's common practice to say, yep, signed it off. Now, to make your life super easy, we have provided you with a Word document template of a road safety audit. It's our template that we use, but you have free reign to rebrand it and make it your own. But the reason we do that, we want to see that consistency. We want to see the headings. We want to see all of that, ticked off. And there are some advantages with also some of the information about what is a road safety audit? What's this process? Because you will know all of that, but some people might get that report and be a little bit confused. And if it's, spelt out what this is and why it's been done and what your obligations are, it's going to help. So please use that template. Completion meeting, responding to the audit and implementing. As a project manager, you'll get that report. Everybody should be keeping file copies of it for the reasons I just mentioned and other probable reasons. You've got to respond to that as a project manager, designer in writing to all the recommendations, but you don't have to give that back to the audit team. Too often we see audits being done because somebody told them they had to do an audit. And so they do an audit and they just put it in a drawer. They don't do anything with it. And I think we've covered this, but your response as a project manager or designer may become public. Just remember that audits do get made public for different reasons. It's good practice to pass that over to the audit team as well. And remember, if you're the project manager or those receiving the audit report, it's done to help your project, but it is your project. And it's your decision about what happens. Okay.
We have a question. We have a question, Ken, that I think.
Great.
What liability exists with auditors if there is a fatality at the audited site?
Good question. So I do a tiny little presentation on legal liability at the end. So I'll just put a pin in that one because there's a bit of complexity to it. But yes, I mean, you're providing advice and incidents could happen. So there is a chance of that. But I'll explain more in module 6, I think. 6, yeah, after you've done your audit report, and we're sort of knocking a bit of that out. Any other questions? Emma?
There's more of a comment is from Catherine. We always debate, can a client safety engineer be on the safety audit team?
So, good question.
I thought it was worth, yeah.
No, thank you. What is independence is a big debate that we have been having in the audit fraternity for a long time. So you must be independent of the project. It's pretty clear that it states that. But, well, okay, so I work for, hypothetically, if I work for ABC multinational consultants, and I've got an office in Melbourne, and we've got an office in Brisbane and one in Tokyo. And if I do the design in the Melbourne office, can we get the Brisbane office road safety auditor to auditors, the team, to do the audit on our design? Or let's go a little bit more narrow. The Melbourne office has 150 people. Can the design team do the audit? Do the design and then hand it over to the road safety team to do the road safety audit. Now, there's no real clarity on that in the Austroads guide, and the new Austroads guide goes even a little bit stronger on saying really independence has to be showing that they are, void of any sort of influence on their auditing, and that's the whole purpose of it. I mean, Will's put in there they're not impartial. I mean, that's I suppose that's the crux of it. But That being said, they are sort of independent to a degree from the project. And I do know people who argue very strongly that, they've got professional integrity and the like. But I can argue sort of both sides of it, because I go, well, yes, but they're also, the design team's under pressure on time and budget, and their team leader and director are saying, this has got to be quick and it's got to be done. And the client is it's killing us here because the budget's being stretched, and so you can see there could be that, those challenges. This is one interesting, like it's up for debate. I mean, I think it's cleanest and easiest to completely use independent, different company, different, or the like. But nobody has yet had legal action upon them about not being independent. But as a client, if you're ever procuring a road safety audit, you could make your decision on this very, very clear and very easy. Okay. Yes. So Catherine's saying she could see why it caused so much debate, and said no. I mean, that's probably the safest. But yeah, it's easy to make these things sort of black and white, but often life gets a bit grey, doesn't it? Let's do a little bit more discussion about one of our specific road users. So part of the requirements of an Austroad sort of compliant road safety audit training course is that we cover off the needs of a variety of road users, in fact, all road users. So we have been talking quite a bit about cars and some of the challenges there. We are now going to go into some dedicated modules on pedestrians, cyclists, motorcyclists, heavy vehicles, which Jamie Robinson's going to take you through in the next module, and sweat paths and those sorts of things. And we're going to try and cover off just a bit into those road users. So I'm going to share my screen again, and we will take a 2-minute, 3-minute break in after we get a few of these slides underway. Oh, you can see there's a Wally coming up, I think. So hope you're counting your Wallies. Didn't remind you earlier on. Okay, so let's talk about pedestrians. And really, we just want to identify some of the requirements for pedestrians to have safe travel, some technical information about pedestrians. I'm going to hone in on some common road safety audit issues for pedestrians, but by no means am I covering off everything. And then a lot of it you just got to look from a logical perspective at. And a bit of terminology at the end. Okay, 4 groups of pedestrians at the greatest risk: the elderly, the young, the disabled, and the intoxicated. So in terms of pure numbers of death and serious injury on the roads of Australia and New Zealand, and in fact, the roads worldwide, intoxicated are most overrepresented pedestrian fatal and serious injury by an absolute country mile. Disabled, very low numbers, but in terms of death and serious injury, but at a very high risk, at an individual risk, because of their having to sometimes walk or wheel on the road and these sorts of things because they can't get to the safer areas and the like. Young because of their sort of cognitive abilities, and elderly because of their cognitive abilities, funnily enough. But young, also with that inability to, well, they're quicker at running after the ball or jumping out of things and the like. 3 basic strategies for pedestrian safety: segregation, separation, and integration. So segregation is really where you say this group over there and this group over here. Cars on these freeways, pedestrians not on this bit. Surprised if you can tell me which country this is in. And it's actually, it was a very big surprise to me when I found out which country this was. Oh, good guess on India, China. These are the ones that I thought it would be as well. Kip's getting closer. Oh, there it goes. Adrian got in there with Canada. Yeah, apparently it's Canada. Anyway, I think we're going to rival that in Victoria with the interchange of Northeast Link. We did a safe system assessment on that. I think it maxes out in the interchange bit at 21 lanes. I think that just beats that. Anyway, I'm off topic. Segregation also works where you say pedestrian mall. That's only pedestrians. So that's the segregation, fairly, obvious one. Separation can be done in time with the, the fact that bit of road gets used at one time by pedestrians, at one time by vehicles, and we're trying to make sure those two keep separated, as are children's crossings and the like. As are sort of these crossings where you might be going in all sorts of directions, cross that way or that way. Prize, if you can tell me the official name for that type of crossing. Yeah, it's not a scramble crossing. I mean, that's the more colloquial term for it. I mean, it's very much called a scramble crossing, but there is a sort of official name for it. It's a little bit of a hard one. Oh, Catherine is on it. It's a Barnes dance. It's a Barnes dance. Must be a lady or a man called Barnes that came up with the idea, called a Barnes dance. Separation in space as well. So our refuge islands, footpaths, those sorts of things, we're separating from road users when they're in the general vicinity. Now that separation in space, we want to really, as auditors, ensure that we are catering for enough separation. And your classic is, how big do you make your refuge island? And yes, there are standards and guidelines that you can follow and check and all of that. But, as an auditor, I like to have some of these rules of thumb in my mind to not be, super influenced by that. But is the area wide enough if a father or a mother is pushing their pram that they don't have to decide whether their child or themselves stands in live traffic? That's a pretty good rule of thumb. Some people like the bicycle one, if you're on your bike and you're pausing there, that you don't have a wheel. So, you're getting that feel for it. But you'd also want to think about, what are your road users? How many of them are there going to be? Are there lots of mobility devices using this? And is that big enough? Separation, where we sort of almost get to segregation, where we have pedestrian overpasses. One thing that I sort of discovered in my road safety time is that, these are wonderful devices if they are used. But gee, we see so many of them go in and they're just not used by the road users. They're big, expensive, elaborate things. But if a pedestrian wants to go over to the servo here and they're here, there's a fair proportion of them that ain't walking up that and over there and down that and that and that and that and all the way to there. No, I'm just going that way or that way. We just need to factor that into the way we think about these things. And as a road safety auditor, you're thinking about pedestrians and their desire lines. That's a term that we always use as auditors with pedestrians. You could say the facility is not on the pedestrian desire line, or we need to be more, the pedestrian desire line is here, and it's going to cause these issues. The desire line is basically you just draw a straight line from where they are to where, origin, destination, straight line, that's the desire line. Pedestrians are our road user least willing to go off their desire line. And integration, shared zones. So a shared zone is a legal entity in Australia and New Zealand, and some other jurisdictions around the world. But we have this one written into our road rules. Okay, so can somebody tell me, first one in the chat, what is the legal rule around this shared zone? So it's got a speed limit, but what, for vehicles, but what is the legal? Yep. Okay, so we had Shanna's come in second there. We've already given Will a prize today, I think. So Shanna's going to get that prize. So pedestrians have priority. That's right. So that's the road rule. If you enter a shared zone, vehicles have to give way to pedestrians. It's like a zebra crossing for, whatever length that's been signed like that. Pedestrians have priority. Now, another one is a little bit trickier now. You get a chance to win a prize. There's some guidance in Australia's and a few other documents which give you these general principles of how to design a shared zone. Now, there's sort of a way that that's encapsulated. What do you think that sort of principle you're trying to achieve is? Sure, you want lower speed and those sorts of things, but what's the principles? So not I suppose the specifics of it, like great point in there that's come out of great sightlines. You do want that. That's more of a, but higher up, what's the principle we're trying to achieve? Pedestrian protection, yep, absolutely. But there's something else. Design philosophy almost. Yes, Tim's getting much, much closer here. Oh, okay. So Adrian's got a nice one in there with cars will know it's pedestrian priority without having to look, without having to see the signs and the like. So between sort of Tim and Adrian there, it sort of mashes together to what I'm trying to get to, which is you make it not look like a road. That's the kind of thing. You're getting rid of curbs, you're changing textures, you're changing the getting rid of line marking. You really do want to make it not look like a road. And in fact, you're driving in a really great shared zone if you go, I'm not even sure I'm allowed to drive in here. Well, that is weird. That's good shared zone stuff. In fact, I think there's a great one in Bendigo for anybody who gets to Bendigo, which I like, and you're on these cobblestones and the parking's all odd and then fountains are popping up and you're just like, am I actually allowed to drive through here? That's great. And Matt's saying Swinburne Uni has a good shared zone. Okay. And another good one in Geelong from, thank you. So keep your eye out for good shared zones. As an auditor, that's really important though for us because, if it is really relying on just the signage, as was mentioned before, you're starting to get yourself in a challenge. And this one is an interesting one because they did some really good things, I think. This is down in Sale. So let's have a look at it a little bit more here. They've gone, okay, they've got rid of the curbing, they've changed the surface texture, but then they've gone and line marked it like a road. So you've got good and then you've got some not so good. They've put this sign in here, which is it's a sign that doesn't need to be there, but it's probably acknowledgement that not as many people as we would like actually know the road rules. Okay, let's have a look at got some people who are not happy with sales, a little effort there. let's have a look at some specific audit issues, some sort of in-your-face audit issues when thinking about pedestrians. Then we'll do a little exercise and you can have a stretch. Actually, I might do that now because I realize I've got a number of slides to get through before I get to our little exercise, and we're over an hour in. So I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes, have a stretch, fill up your coffee, your water, or whatever beverage of choice you're on at this stage on a Friday, and we'll get back to it very shortly. So we're going to just go through a few of things. Again, I've got some case studies, and I like to pop the case studies up to give you sort of that insight. But I always keep saying this is not every road safety audit issue. You need to be thinking holistically. Okay, sightlines. So Kip made a really great call in there about sightlines and ensuring we can see pedestrians, especially pedestrians at crossing points. Now, this one has a particular road safety challenge associated with it. It is a slip lane, okay? And pedestrians at slip lanes has become the big sort of hot topic around road safety people, road safety infrastructure people now for the last couple of years. There's been big debate. It's polarizing our industry, but it's great that we are having these debates. But anyway, if you are driving along in a slip lane like this, where are you looking? You're looking to your right, aren't you? You're looking out here because you want to make sure you've got a gap so you can put the foot down. Then you've got a pedestrian now coming out here. And this pedestrian has priority because it's marked. So the pedestrian can be walking out there, step out. The driver's coming up here and looking to their right. That's not a good scenario at all. So slip lanes can be very challenging with pedestrians for these particular reasons. It's that time where you're really not looking where you're going as a driver, and that's not a good thing. Another thing to be very aware of when road safety auditing is the swept path of larger vehicles in areas where pedestrians are congregating. This one looks okay, but large trucks sweeping around areas, and we see the back of the truck or the larger vehicle sweeping over pedestrian areas. We unfortunately had a multiple fatality, I think it was, or was it one fatality? Definitely multiple people seriously injured in one in Melbourne just very recently of an intersection and large vehicles sweeping around there or taking out the going around and hitting the pedestrians. So something that you need to be aware of. Jamie Robinson is going to take you through looking at swept path diagrams, understanding how vehicles track around intersections and how you work that sort of stuff out later. But just be aware, it's not just for a large vehicle hitting infrastructure or the like, but it can be very severe. But even just the presence of pedestrian facilities becomes important. And so, here we've got a route that's actually being made into the heavy vehicle alternate route. It has no pedestrian facilities, but it's starting to become more of a pedestrian thoroughfare. And they're walking in the grass. If that's muddy or wet or the like, they're walking in the shoulders, or they're trying to push a pram, or they'll be basically walking in the shoulder. So the presence of facilities is something for us to be looking at. And here's another example there where you're going to have the same challenge. Oh, it's a gap in the roundabout sign in the right spot. Yep. Sorry, you're not going to be able to drive past a roundabout sign now these days without just checking the gaps. Yeah, same thing there. We talked about pedestrian desire line, didn't we? Here we go. Pedestrian, down in Footscray. Pedestrians come from here. Their desire line's the entry to the station. And the engineers have put up a pedestrian fence. And this is a great picture to say that pedestrian fences, in a lot of situations, make matters worse. Pedestrians will walk on the wrong side of a pedestrian fence on the road rather than walk out of their way too far. And I'm not a fan of pedestrian fences in many situations. There are a couple though. One situation I am quite a fan of a pedestrian fence is outside of a pub or a nightclub or that sort of scenario. And the reason for that is I've done 2 coronial investigation reports on pedestrian fatalities involving people coming out of drinking establishments and onto the road. One of them, it was like a scuffle, a fight, something was going on, and they came out down the stairs, fell onto the road, and struck. And the other one, it's a bit unclear, but I think they just sort of staggered out or fell out, and out they went. So the pedestrian fence in those scenarios, though, is more a containment fence, really, to try to contain. And it's the same principle why I like them outside schools, outside school gates. It's a containment style thing rather than directing them to a particular spot. There can be targeted use of them in some other specific areas, but just be aware as an auditor that, and this picture hopefully will stick in your mind, that you put that there, and they put that there thinking that, oh, this is great, this will make everybody go in here. No, she'll happily walk along the road, along the gutter, until she gets to the point that she wants to. And it's summed up quite nicely in sort of these ones as well, I think, sort of that desire line. It's about the user experience and thinking as an auditor, what is the user experience? Somebody at City of Greater Geelong many years back said to me, oh, we sometimes put in, or decide where we're putting our path facilities by just leaving it for a while, seeing where the goat tracks appear, and then we put the paths in those spots. I'm like, I love that. That's user-centric design, isn't it? Rather than going, oh, here and here, and that will try to make them go where we want. And lots of examples of that sort of stuff where people want to go this way. That's what they do. And that one, there's not safety issues really associated with it, but something to bear in mind. Just a few pictures of desire lines. At that sort of high level, early feasibility audit, the planning style road safety audit, you can think about, cutting off populations with their, where they want to go. And we do see it in a lot of countries in the world, the big fast motorway goes through, separates a community from their shopping area or they're going across the road. Okay, we've got to provide those facilities and think about that as we go about designing and auditing, of course. Okay, let's just have a look at any questions here. Okay, I can see one's coming from Julian. Would it not be implement pedestrian safety for the safety of the majority of people? Without them, wouldn't a large portion of people walk on the outside of the crossing? Yeah, okay, that's a good point. So, if you can improve the safety of, the bulk by creating a safety issue or opening up a safety issue for a smaller number, do you do it? I think as an auditor, our aim is to find that situation that's safe for everybody, of course, and that's obvious. But I suppose the one and the example, a number of examples I see with pedestrian fencing, I dare say would make it much worse for that smaller number that, so because you've fenced off that desire line, they will walk continually along the road out of their way in higher and higher risk areas. So without it there, it would be a sort of, maybe more people would take a smaller risk compared to a small number taking a much higher risk. So, you're balancing out your risk profile there and you're thinking about that. The ideal, as I said, is to try and find your scenario that is good for everybody. But I think it's a fair point to sort of bring up. Let's have a look at this one. How are we going to do? Okay, so this is so we're on a road here, and we've got, this is what the drivers are seeing. And the next photo I take is from just behind this little hazard marker sign. Okay, so that's what the pedestrians are seeing. And again, this one, we were asked to come in and investigate after an incident. And an incident with a pedestrian and a vehicle at this location. Now, who has got priority here is the question. Okay, who's got priority? So Damien, Kip, straight in there with car, and they're spot on. And Kathy's coming as well. So no prizes for that one though, too easy. Car priority. It's not a shared zone. It's got no pedestrian crosswalk markings, pedestrian crossing markings, wombat or zebra crossing. But the pedestrians there sort of, there's a lot there to encourage them, isn't it? To go, that it's a different surface. It's narrowed down for them, which is nice. I like that narrowing effect. But it didn't take long standing out there before seeing that these pedestrians just walk out and the cars were giving way. And, it was quite nice. But you think, gee, okay, we're in confusion of priority here. And that for me is a really important principle to think about when you're thinking about any scheme, especially with pedestrians, is confusion of priority. So I'm ready to read the comments on the side. People want the socks. Confusion of priority is really important, and I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I like it to be clear, clear priority. I'm not a particular fan of these sort of things, which these are probably less risky, but painting something to give an indication of priority when the legal, the legislation doesn't give a priority. Well, the legislation on these sorts of intersections is ridiculous in Australia and New Zealand. The driver turning in here has to give way to a pedestrian crossing. The driver coming out does not have to give way to a pedestrian crossing. You've got sort of pedestrian. Why not? Why are we not making these just pedestrian crossings? Well, I know the reason why often is because the council can't get major traffic control item approval from the road controlling authority of the main arterial because they think it might congest the road. But that's ridiculous because any vehicle turning in here has to give way anyway, so it doesn't actually change. But anyway, we're on to a different thing. So when you're putting in these good facilities, threshold treatments and the like, we do need to be conscious that some pedestrians might get a little bit confused. Is this their priority? I mean, us as engineers and technical people would look at that and go, no, of course it's not pedestrian priority. That's that's just the piano key marking on a thing. But the travelling public, some of them will not understand this, and so I think we just need to be aware of that. Interestingly, this one, they were aware of that. They said, well, that's why we used yellow markings to try to differentiate it from a zebra crossing, a pedestrian crossing. We're playing in a little sort of traffic engineering land here if we think the community is sort of astute enough to understand that subtlety. This one I like, and it's, I suppose, an example of where you can still get that threshold treatment, but you're lessening the look of absolute priority, aren't you? I mean, pedestrian to walk up to here, same road surface color, stretches through. Maybe the platform could be moved back a little bit just to, really clearly show if you're hitting a road. Or you go the other way around, obviously, and you actually make this a pedestrian crossing, sign it, mark it, really make it clear that way. And airports. Airports are a absolute goldmine of road safety audit training material. I think it's because the federal government looks after it. And anyway, this one, walk out of Launceston Airport here. You're going to get picked up there. You've had a great flight. You're excited, going visiting friends or whatever, and you walk out here. And well, who's got priority here? We've got taxis there to use this as their quick run in to pick up passengers. Again, it's just confusion of priority. I mean, taxis technically have priority there, but geez, you wouldn't quite know it. The one thing that I think is lessening their risk significantly is the raised portion here. So that's a bonus, but that could be easily clarified. And again, we've got people with good intentions saying, "Hey, cross here," but let's clear that priority up. And in Australia, we use very specific pedestrian crossing signage. And you need to do the line marking as well. So we do our zebra crossing and it's clear pedestrian priority. So there's an example of it. There we talked about slip lanes and the challenges of those already. And I'll just see if any questions or comments have come in.
There was one a little earlier, Ken, which is about what are your thoughts on shared spaces and paths?
Yeah. Oh, shared zones? Or
shared zones. Yeah.
Shared zones. Okay.
Yeah.
Shared zones. Yeah, I love shared zones. I think it's great. I think it makes a populated area, more livable, easier for active transport. Yeah, really, they can be wonderful, but you want to design them correctly. And if they're not designed correctly, they can present some challenges. And funnily enough, the shared zone, shared path terminology, actually quite a few people out there get those confused. They think a shared zone is a shared path and a shared path is a shared area. So a shared path is your pedestrians and cyclists using a path. They share that path. Shared zone is a specific road rule terminology of an area where a vehicle must give way to a pedestrian. Okay, let's keep ticking along here. And then just, how are we signing these things? Again, random areas where you see use of pedestrian crossing ahead signs as ways to try to encourage pedestrians into a certain area, just incorrect signage using. It's not high risk, but you can pick some of these things up. This one's a little more high risk, I would say. The pedestrian crossing here is, it's marked, it's signed, but at some point, the installer or somebody has thought that you're meant to face your pedestrian leg signs at the pedestrian, so they know where to walk, rather than for the drivers, so that they know that they have to stop at this location. Again, this sort of post-opening or these things you'd hope the project manager or others would pick up, but I'm not making these things up. These are just photos you see, you snap, you add to the training. So here's one. It's not like a hugely bad scenario at all, but I do it because it's a nice example of a specific bit of thinking that we can do. So lovely little seaside town here, and this is the main street. Now forget about the line marking on the road. That's sort of just try to encourage slower speeds and everything. I don't have a particular problem with that. We're looking at this pedestrian crossing, and if you were the auditor at the design stage of this, so before it's built, there's a minor little tweak that could be done, at that design stage, which would just make it a bit safer. Okay? Well, there's a few tweaks, but there's one in particular, like. So yeah, sorry, Matt's put in there raise the crossing, and that is a really great one. It's not the one I was trying to get to, but I'll give Matt a prize for that anyway. Now, Kathy's got improved line of sight for pedestrians, and that is where I'm trying to go. But how? Curtis has put in there to get rid of that bush on the right, remove the bins, remove the trees. We're getting more into that. I'm going to give it to Kathy for her, very much in the right space of what I was thinking. But this one, like, we know vehicles are approaching on this side of the road. They're approaching on this side of the road. We've got to put, well, assuming that they've decided we want the bin and we want the vegetation and all. So I think Kathy gets the prize because she's saying, well, there's something there, you can move that away. But, a very tiny little tweak is here, if that was the other way around and they had the shrubbery and the bin on this side, if they're going to put it in there, then that means that approaching here, the sight lines are opened up. So when our small pedestrian, comes out here, they're not completely hidden by all of this. The sight lines are open. And, you think about, as an auditor, the parking, you do think about, should this be raised? Do we need to get lower speeds down here? Can we narrow it down even further? List goes on, but that's just one. I think that there's no extra cost in that, likely. I mean, drainage might, you have to think about your drainage, but, there's no extra cost in that, changing that, having where it is. So a little example there. Let's have a look at this case study again. People putting in some stuff about the specifics around those pedestrian refuges and crossing points and how you do that. Let's have a look at this one. Another tragic incident that I use to try to prevent these sorts of incidents happening in the future. But this one is another investigation of a fatality we were doing. Pedestrian. So the pedestrian stepped from where we are now out here and was struck by a vehicle coming through here and killed. This is what you see as a driver. So that other photo was taken from out there. This is what you see as a driver. I'm going to go back a bit. I'm going to go back. So this is the approach. So we've got high-speed road, 70 kilometers per hour, slip lane in there. Now, we sort of pondered this for quite a while and looked at it and sort of thought, well, what could be contributing factors here from an infrastructure perspective? There are quite a few different thoughts. I'm going to give Kip a prize on that. Give Kip a prize because Kip sort of got a good bit of thinking going on there. I think everybody else has come out with great stuff, sight lines, there, trees blocking sight lines. That was certainly, a thing that we pointed out as well. But this disconnect on continuity of the facility. And it was really hard. I think it's very hard. And this is another reason as to why you can never audit from photos or street view or the like, because you need to feel, you need to be out there. When you're out there, it's quite amazing. When you've got the green man, the thing ticking away, it's far closer in when you're out there. And everything sort of, when that goes, you kind of want to just step out there and go. But there's this bit here where you've got no priority and the cars are zipping past. So that continuation of it through. So if at a design stage or an early stage, this could have either been continued through or this could have been made into the pedestrian crossing, or ideally a raised pedestrian crossing. Wouldn't that be nice? You know, we would have seen just a connected facility that would have helped. The speed of vehicles coming in there, I think, was another really great point that somebody made. You know, it's fast and there's nothing to wash off speed in this transition into the more pedestrianised part of this. See a few things. Yeah, so so JY Chong, it's the username there, has put in their see-through effect for pedestrians, and that's exactly right. In fact, prize for that one. I'm on a prize frenzy today. I'm like Oprah. I think that's a good point because it's the same philosophy. It's the same human factors philosophy that we're talking about there, see-through effect as kind of for the intersections we were talking about as well. All right, common misunderstanding that a DDA, a Disability Discrimination Act audit, is the same thing as a road safety audit, or it's going to cover off them both. They are very different things. This is checking, you know, ramp grades are accessible. It's got the right tactiles, handrails if needed, all those sorts of really important things within a project, but not required in a road safety audit. You as a road safety auditor may pick up some DDA issues, but you're not out there checking it. You're not measuring ramp grades and those sorts of things for that conformance with the Act, the Disability Discrimination Act, or whatever legislation is in your jurisdiction that sort of mandates these. You're only pointing it out if you believe it presents something that will genuinely manifest in death or serious injury to the community within the risk framework that you're thinking. So quite a bit of the time, you know, there's deficient DDA stuff that's just not even mentioned in a road safety audit. Now, sometimes you might just be nice, and if you know some of that stuff, you make a few notes in the audit for the for others, but it's not your requirement. I'm going to jump past a couple of these because I'm going to give you a little exercise. Beautifully. Here is an intersection. And the intersection has a crash history with pedestrians. And it's a specific location in this intersection has had 3 pedestrian serious injury crashes, I think 2 other injury crashes for pedestrians. Now you don't need to don't put in the chat where you think it is yet. No, well, somebody's put it in there, but it's not correct. So it's all good, because I'm going to make this a little interactive one for everybody to have a guess at. But you've got a clue already that that one was not correct. But I'm going to give you some multiple choice options. And Emma, we're about to put up a poll now, and you can have your vote on this. And I'm going to give you a good couple of minutes to analyze it. But what I've done is drawn crash scenarios, right? That, you know, all present a risk. One of them is just presenting a risk that is significantly higher. Now, if the poll's popped up, you can move it out of the way by just grabbing it and moving it around so you can still see. But crash number 1, so the line is the car and the dotted line is the pedestrian. That's our crash diagram, you know, common terminology, or use a dotted line for pedestrians. So at point 1, turning from this road into this service road and being struck. 2, turning from this slip lane and the pedestrian getting stuck. 3, crossing from the median island or the island onto the roadside being struck. 4, a similar thing, but just on that other leg. And 5, doing a right turn over pedestrian on the footpath. So have a ponder of it, have a look at it. I'll give you a minute or two to ponder a little bit more. Thank you. Lots of people putting their votes in. I'm going to give you another 24 seconds. Remember, you're not being marked on this. In fact, we don't even know who votes for what, so we can't even do that. So it's just one, but and let's end that poll now, please, Emma. And let's display the results. Okay, it's neck and neck on location 1 and 2 with 9 votes. Location 3 came in there. 4 and 5 have not got too much, but a little bit of interest. So let's stop that and remove the poll away from people's screens so I can talk to that. So the answer is 2. Now, I was sort of trying to make this a little bit challenging because I can certainly see risk with every one of the other ones, okay? That they certainly present risk. So they're all viable things to bring up in road safety audits for one reason or another. But 2 has this particularly high risk nature to it. And it's quite intriguing. So the question that's come in here from Adrian, is that left turn not signalised? What a great question. This is not. And this is it's just a sort of bizarre thing to try to get your head around. I'm going to go back so I can draw on this, but it's a really great example. Have a look at this crossing point. So you cross from the middle of the road. Oh. Sorry, the poll came up. I have to re-get my pen up. Okay. Let's have a look here. We're in the median island there, for example. So you're crossing the road, and you get to the island here, and then you cross the slip lane. You're on this one. Go there, and then you sort of continue out there. Or if you're there, you go that way. The actual configuration of this is all a bit odd and a bit skewed. And the reason for that is that this should be going to here and then to there. So a driver coming up here does not turn directly onto a pedestrian when they're looking that way, and it's unsignalized and they can go. So the configuration of it is not great. Now, your challenge as a road safety auditor is to pick that up before they ever build it like that and say, this is going to cause trouble. This is going to be bad. So a little tip on how I do this sort of thinking as a road safety auditor is that on an intersection like this, I will, in my mind, run through each movement as each sort of road user. So what I'll do is I'll come up here in my mind in a car and I'll say, all right, I'm doing a right-hand turn. Okay, that's fine. I'm getting into there. Are there any cyclists around? Are there any pedestrians around? Other vehicles? How's that happening? Okay, I'm going through there. I'm off. I'll do it again. Okay, now I'm going straight. Okay, they're making me deviate out of my lane a bit. So that's interesting. Is that going to cause me issues? I'm going to go straight through. Does that line up? Is it clear where I need to go? Are there any issues? Okay. I'm going to turn left now. Okay, I'm going to turn left. Okay, are there any cyclists? How would a cyclist get by here? Okay, that's a challenge. What if the cyclist was going straight? How am I going to get through that? Pedestrians, okay. And what if there's a pedestrian walking along here? Am I going to see them? I've got good open sight lines. I don't particularly like this, but that's there. Okay, I'm coming into here now. Okay, I'm looking to my right because I want to see how I'm going. I'm going to turn there. What are the cyclists doing? Is there a cyclist there? Okay, pedestrians, no pedestrian. Ooh, got an issue here. That's the sort of thinking, you're stepping your way through, and you're doing that on all of them. And it takes time, you're trying to think through all of these different challenges, thinking, okay, I've come out of the McDonald's and we're going over here. Out of McDonald's? No, that's the McDonald's. Coming out of the McDonald's, I want to get to the other side. Where am I going to go? Have I got a connection? Am I going to walk on the road? Is it on my desire line? Yeah, lots and lots of scenarios in through your mind. Now, you do this as a team, remember? So you're going to get lots of discussion going. If you had time, I think you would have got to that if you'd processed and run through each of those areas and really worked those through. And you would have picked up lots of issues. And your challenge would have been to decide, is the risk enough to warrant getting into my audit? Or is it, there's a tiny bit of risk there and it'll be there for 100 years and most likely there will be no incident that will ever happen as a result of this. And I'm not going to make that audit report, have 500 issues for this intersection because I want to hit them up with the big issues and that are reasonably part of what's going to present death and serious injury into the future. We did that quiz. So just a couple of little things before we wrap up. It is really great to get out there and audit at times when you know there's going to be altered use of the facility. So end of school, if schools are around, if you're doing there's upgrades planned at the near the local footy ground or something, and you can get there on a home game to see the way it operates then, that's wonderful. Great, sort of adds to your the richness of your audit. Practical reality again is you just may not be able to do that for one reason or another. Your audit has to be done in a week and there's no home game. Well, you're not going to see that. Again, you might get some insights from locals if you're not a local yourself, or talk to your client about how does it operate and all. And then as you make recommendations as a road safety auditor, you're recommending all sorts of stuff. It's nice to know a bit of, what's available out there as pedestrian, treatments for pedestrians. We've talked about a few of them already. At pedestrian operated signals, there are things called puffin crossing, pedestrian user friendly intelligent crossing. That's your radar that basically, when you walk up to the house at night and the lights come on automatically, same technology put into the signals, keeps the lights red if there's movement on the crossing. So that's got a puffin. There you can retrofit them to pedestrian crossings. At some point in the pedestrian crossing game, some traffic engineer back in the day decided to go run with a bird theme, and everybody's stuck with that. So puffin crossing, toucan crossings. Toucan crossings are designed for pedestrians and cyclists to be able to cross. Toucan cross. I'm not making this up. It's not a joke that I'm making up. The toucan cross is called a toucan crossing. And in some jurisdictions, you legally have to do that with the two symbols. Pelican crossing. A pelican crossing is a pedestrian light controlled crossing. So that's the one where the driver sees a red light and pedestrians are crossing, and then it goes to a flashing orange light. Flashes. And that's to give any pedestrians that are straggling time to get off, and then it goes to green. Pedestrian light controlled crossing. And I saw I can't even remember what it was, like world's craziest signs or something. This one was, up there in the top 10 of world's craziest signs. Humped pelican. I'm like, that makes complete sense to me. I don't understand why that's funny, but I know I do understand why that's funny. But humped pelican crossing makes complete sense. There are Pegasus crossings. So this is for people on horses, so they can reach the button. And there's also like a little legal reason for this as well, because a horse is technically a vehicle. And so you need to provide in its own part of the legislation that you can cross the road on a horse with that symbol. I mean, bizarre legislation. In fact, random other bit of legislation around horses, it is illegal to ride a horse when you're intoxicated, because that's drink driving under the road rules. But interesting to know that it is not illegal to ride an intoxicated horse.
Hey, Ken, did you know that a horse's beverage of choice is Chardonnay?
Oh, a little comedy act for a Friday afternoon.
Sorry, everyone. I couldn't resist.
Yeah, I know. I'm
very pleased with myself.
But surely it's illegal to get a horse intoxicated. Adrian says it is illegal to get a horse. If it does it itself, though, then it's up to the horse. No. All right. That pretty much brings us to an end on the intoxicated horse. But I want to tell you something again to sort of alleviate probably some maybe concerns people might have or nervousness around this, because I was showing, some incidents where members of the community would be killed and seriously injured, and the designers and the auditors and those could have with alterations probably meant that doesn't happen. So it's a big responsibility, isn't it? The Austroads Guide suite and the Austroads Guide to Road Safety Part 6A has these things at the end called checklists. Now, in the next version coming out shortly, they're called prompt lists, because checklists gave this connotation that if you tick everything off, you think, you will have covered off everything needed to be done in a road safety audit. Not the case. They are thought starters, things to prompt your thinking. And they have a section on pedestrians at intersections and at other locations. And you can, it says, are sight lines clear for pedestrians? Are the desire lines for pedestrians, safe, free of hazards, and lots of questions to just get you thinking. So as a new road safety auditor, I always encourage people to use the checklists. You don't submit the checklist with your road safety audit. It is there just to guide you, help your thinking. It might make you think about things you hadn't thought of. It might say, how does drainage work? And is that going to cause road safety issues? Oh, God, I hadn't even thought about that. I'm out here, it's 40 degrees. I'm not thought about when it rains. I wonder what happens there. And you will get all of that sort of stuff. There's heaps of questions which you just go, well, that's not relevant. Of course it's not relevant. This is trying to cover off every part of the every scenario out there in the road environment. But another thing to help you as an auditor. And when you go to do your mock road safety audit at the end of this, we've given you the guide, and you're going to use the checklist, and it's going to help you with some thinking. Again, I don't want to see your checklist, but you will go, oh, did I think about that? Did I think about this? Did I think about that? And it'll help you along. Final little quiz just to round it out. I don't think it's not a critical question, but let's pop up that quiz, Emma, if you can find it. Sorry, Will's making me laugh with, you can, it was to everybody, okay? All right, which of the following is not one of the 3 infrastructure strategies for pedestrian safety, going all the way back to the start of the course? Is prevention, segregation, separation, or integration one of the strategies? We'll give you another 10 seconds because it's a quick and easy one. And let's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and let's end that poll. And prevention is correct. That's not one of the infrastructure strategies that we're going at. We want to prevent pedestrian trauma, but we do it through either segregation, separation, or integration as our main strategies. Thank you very much. Well done, everybody, on that one. And I think that pretty much leaves the end of the slides. So stop sharing there. Now, Emma, are there any course logistics admin things that need to be covered off? Are we good?
You just need to hop into Moodle and complete the quiz for this module. So there is a quiz to launch, but no other assignments or anything like that for this week. Ken, you mentioned that the audit, that we will provide an audit template that is available in Moodle under module 5. So you don't really need to look at it right now, but it is under module 5. Yeah.
So and you're going to use that template in order to write up your audit, and so you'll be getting very familiar with it later on. So thank you for that. And yes, the quiz is there. Make sure you do your quiz, and if you haven't done the last one, make sure you do that. And we're going to give you a little bit of time. We're going to finish a little bit early so you can knock off that research assignment in your last 9 minutes if you do some quick Googling and whip up a nice fact sheet, or get out the phone and record yourself with your original song that you've made up about sightlines or something.
Yep, that's due on Tuesday, next Tuesday at 5 p.m.
Awesome. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you next week. Thanks, Emma.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
Bye.
Bye.